Hey guys, in case you couldn't tell from the title, this is a very personal video, and it's also about something that affects a lot of people out there. So I wanted to make this about more than just being cathartic for me or just telling my story. And in light of that, I decided to reach out to a very special sponsor that can maybe help some people who are going through some of the same things that I went through. So look out for that at the end of the video. I don't often talk about life before my YouTube channel because, well, I don't remember a lot of my childhood anymore. High school was, high school for a guy who was way too into anime and video games, and between graduating and ending up here, I feel like I didn't really accomplish much. Like, I did creative work that I was proud of, writing game reviews and honing my craft as a critic, and working on personal projects, which I never finished on the side, and I did a whole year of intensive training to become a game designer, but my college years amounted to a string of failed attempts to follow dreams, and a whole lot of being exploited by a boss who thought that exposure was a suitable salary for a full-time features editor. On that note, how is exposure not already a cryptocurrency name? Get on that, internet. Without going into too much detail or blaming anyone in particular, except for you, Steve, straight out of game design school, a lot went wrong with my life all at once, and I fell into a state of what we in the business call depression, which lasted for about 4 years of my life. And I really can't overstate how much interacting with you guys over the last few years has pulled me back from that. But before I unexpectedly stumbled my way into a moderately successful YouTube career, the thing that helped me beat back the dark feelings best, that helped me duel my inner monsters, if you will, was a children's card game. Specifically, Yu-Gi-Oh! Between the last 2 semesters of my game design diploma and ending up on YouTube, I spent a lot of money on little pieces of paper with drawings of monsters on them. Like when one of my friends asked me, "Hey Jeff, how many Yu-Gi-Oh cards do you have?" I'd just respond with, "A problem." However, I don't think that's really fair to say. I mean, I did definitely have a bit of a gambling compulsion related to opening packs. When I was first getting back into the game toward the end of my game design course, I bought 1 pack out of 20 in a store and came away with an $80 secret rare rescue rabbit, which made me feel very lucky, and I kept buying packs after that until I was well past the point of ever conceivably making my money back. But the thing is, while Konami definitely got their marketing money's worth out of me, and part of what kept me in the game was the sunk cost fallacy of having already spent $1 billion on cardboard, I think that Yu-Gi-Oh! Was ultimately really good for me. See, the thing about children's card games is that you can't really play them alone. I mean, you can to a small degree, playing solitaire hands to test your deck's balance, and there are fan-made deck testing networks that allow for limited online play to a certain extent, but it's not the same as playing against another person face to face. That's when the mind games and strategy really come into play, and when you get to enjoy the psychological metagame of showing off how shiny your cards are. So playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Got me out of the house on a regular basis. It got me interacting with other human beings. Dare I say it, it got me to make new friends, although not to the extent that we traded phone numbers or anything. But I had people I recognized at my local card shops who recognized me, and sometimes we'd hang out and talk a bit after tournaments. That is one of the biggest hurdles with depression, just forcing yourself to get out of the house and be social. I was already deep into online gaming and spending way too much time on YouTube and Reddit, so I could have very comfortably slipped into the life of a total shut-in, doing nothing but playing games and writing things in the vain hope that a few people would read and maybe comment. But because of Yu-Gi-Oh! I had somewhere to be every weekend. I had something to plan for week to week. And if I felt like going out during the week, I could reliably enjoy myself and get a bit of social interaction in by popping into a comic shop or anime store and buying some packs. I'd sometimes find myself buying packs just to cheer up. And to be clear, indulging in a gambling compulsion is not a healthy way to deal with other issues, but the hit to my wallet was minor compared to what I might spend at, say, a casino, and each pack, even the crappy ones, gave me some new tools to use in deck building. This might sound kinda strange, but for a while Yu-Gi-Oh! Was my main creative outlet. I was writing at the time, but it was mostly for work and it was way too open-ended to be relaxing. My Yu-Gi-Oh! Collection gave me a finite space and set of tools with which to be creative, as well as some objective standard to hold my work to. The most creative deck in the world is a waste if it can't consistently win games, after all. Still, I really liked being able to put my own stamp on my playstyle, so I was that guy at locals who always brings a rogue deck. For a while I was playing Lightsworns and Six Samurai well past their expiration dates. Playing Six Samurai in particular got me into different stun decks. I played a lot of Rock Stun and Gagagas, as well as Noble Knights Evil Swarm hybrid deck that worked better than it should have, honestly, but which was still not the best. Anyway, I always had a thing for control-oriented toolbox builds, because I'm a bit of an asshole like that. Oh, and for those who are getting too bogged down by all of this jargon, rogue decks are decks that aren't highly played or especially powerful and don't show up in the meta rankings, but have a chance of exploiting the popular decks for wins. Toolbox decks are decks designed to give you access to a lot of different answers to problems your opponents create for you at once, and stun decks are decks that lock your opponent out of their win condition. These are decks that require a lot of skill and knowledge to use correctly, which makes them a lot of fun to play. Not so fun to play against though, unless you're really into people saying no to everything you try to do and taking an hour to play a single turn. I am very sorry to everyone at my locals. If you want to really dig into it, there are probably a lot of reasons why I gravitated toward that kind of deck. Money was a big one. I could literally buy 10 of my Rock Stun decks for the price of one of the Dragon Ruler decks that it was designed to beat. And in connection with that, there was a big sense of satisfaction that came from using my pocket change to totally destroy a degenerate top-tier strategy that cost over $1,000 to put together. Yes, you heard that right, over $1,000. For one deck. A deck that was only viable for all of 6 months before literally everything that made it good was banned or limited beyond usefulness. But beyond the monetary reasons, I think that playing these kinds of decks also gave me a bit of an emotional safety net. When I won at locals, that felt great because I was piloting a cheap deck that I built myself through ingenuity and hard work. I earned that win with my skill. But when I lost, I mean, I was already playing with a handicap, running decent, cheap cards against decks that cost hundreds of dollars. Of course I couldn't win every game. That's just how luck works. Again, maybe not the healthiest or most sportsmanlike attitude to take to a competition, but it let me enjoy playing without too much damage to my ego. And I needed it, because when I eventually moved on to Hearthstone and could afford to play all of the top tier decks, I would get really salty when I'd lose and go on a multi-game tilt, which is probably the biggest reason why I only ever got as high as rank 2 instead of making it to Legend. I still do that, by the way, with other online games like Overwatch, but that's a whole other psychological struggle that I'm still working to get a handle on. Because I think to be human is to be in a state of either constantly struggling to put out new metaphorical fires or just accepting that you're on fire and trying to roll with it. Everybody's got something that they're dealing with, no matter how well put together they seem to be. Anyway, I'm getting off topic. Shielding my ego was likely a big subconscious part of why I played the decks I did, but on a conscious level, I really enjoyed the experience of building my own decks from scratch, bodging together sets of cards that weren't designed with each other in mind, and discovering new, more versatile options for the limited pool of resources that I did have to work with. It was also fun to look at what the best current decks were doing, figure out the weak points of their strategies, and tune my own deck to stop them. I enjoyed posing questions that the players of those decks weren't used to being asked, like, how does my big multi-elemental dragon spam deck deal with only being able to play one element at a time and not being able to special summon? The answer was not well, by the way. It was like solving a puzzle and designing my own game challenges all rolled into one. And for all of the successes I've had on YouTube and elsewhere, one of the proudest moments in all of the time that I've spent online came a year ago when, out of the blue, someone DM'd me on Reddit to say that they'd been using and loving a Ghost Trick mill deck list that I posted back in March of 2014 on the Yugioh subreddit, which was right around when I stopped playing, funny enough. For 3 years, Yu-Gi-Oh meant a lot to me, more than it did when I was a kid getting up every Saturday morning to watch the show on YTV. But it was expensive, and traveling out to events was time-consuming. Plus, my decks of choice weren't doing so well in the new meta, and I was wary about investing in yet more cardboard, considering that Steve didn't pay me for my full-time job. So when Blizzard unleashed their free-to-play digital CCG Hearthstone back in May of 2014, I jumped ship. On paper, it was a much better deal all around. I could start playing and amass a collection without spending a cent, and even if I did spend real money, I could build a viable, even top-tier deck for much cheaper than the equivalent in Yu-Gi-Oh! I built dozens of great decks in my time playing Hearthstone, and I only spent as much as it would have cost me to build one top-tier deck in Yu-Gi-Oh! Which is still a lot, to be clear. You should never spend as much money on anything as I spent on Hearthstone. But there were other benefits, at least from my perspective at the time. Cards would always have a fixed trade-back value, so I wouldn't run into the common Yu-Gi-Oh! Problem where a card you spend $80 on one month is worth 80 cents when the ban list drops the next. Speaking of, I also wouldn't have to worry about ban lists since the cards could be rebalanced by the devs on the fly. And I could play online whenever I had free time instead of having to take a train out to locals. But looking back, it was probably worse for me overall precisely because of all of those different advantages of the digital format, and because of the fact that there's no real chat function when you're playing a game against someone. I was no longer getting out of my room on a regular basis or even interacting with people. Instead, my leisure time consisted of holding up in there whenever I wasn't working on reviewing other games in that same room. My regular social interactions were reduced to one D&D game every 3 months and the Hearthstone and anime subreddits, as well as the chat room for the site I worked for, and maybe the 4 or 5 comments I'd get on my articles per week. The only positive thing that I was getting out of Hearthstone was the fleeting sense of accomplishment I'd get when I won, and that was more than tempered by how frustrated I'd get when I lost. Oh, and there was that little dopamine rush of opening packs. That was nice too. But I'd really lost my escape hatch from the daily drudgery and the satisfying tactile sensation of fiddling with real cards, something that I didn't even realize was helping to keep me grounded until it was gone. The eventual introduction of real-world fireside gatherings helped a bit, but they weren't as frequent as weekly local Yu-Gi-Oh! Tournaments or as personal since everyone was tethered to their tablet or computer. Plus, they were even further out of the way, but despite those inconveniences, I can honestly say that the few fireside gatherings I went to were the most fun that I ever had with the game. And I'm saying that when it was basically my game of the year for 2 years running. Because that's the thing, everything I saw as an inconvenience about Yu-Gi-Oh! Having to get out of the house, having to sort and trade physical cards, having to manually run through how my cards worked with every opponent, those things were helping me. I was tricking myself into being more present and social, and it stopped me from slipping further into depression. Hearthstone didn't help in the same way. I needed to find a different escape from my work of playing video games. The solution I found was watching more anime, funnily enough, and when even that wasn't helping me cope with my shitty working conditions, I decided to jump ship once more and take a crack at talking about anime on YouTube instead, which worked out pretty well. I think. It definitely made me interact with a lot more people than my old job. So what's the point of all this? Well, basically, it's that if you're suffering, you're not alone. It happens to all of us, and just about anything can help you cope with and even recover from what ails you. If you're dealing with a mood disorder or mental illness or even a chronic bout of well-justified sadness or anger brought on by awful circumstances in your life, you'll be surprised where you can find the tools to fight it. It's important to find a way to push yourself out of your shell, to find things, however small, that motivate you to talk with other people, set and accomplish goals, and break your habits. And that probably won't be Yu-Gi-Oh! For you. It might not be any kind of hobby at all. Everyone's personal demons are just that. Personal, and your path to beat them will be personal for you as well. But it's not something you have to do alone. You can get help from a counselor, talk to your friends and family, or just vent to a stranger online. One possible answer is to use this video's sponsor, BetterHelp, who actually didn't reach out to me. I reached out to them because I've heard that they're fantastic and I've tried their service myself and seen that it works, and I wanted to find a way at the end of this video to help you guys. So they set me up with a URL, betterhelp.com/basement, that you can use to try them out. If you're curious what they are, they're an affordable online counseling service that can connect you with any of their 2,000 different licensed therapists with expertise tailored to your specific needs. BetterHelp lets you work through those problems at your own pace, messaging your therapist whenever you need or want to. You don't have to book and stick to appointments unless you want to, in which case you can hop on the phone, live chat, or a video call and hash things out that way. And if you're not meshing with your therapist, they can easily match you with a new one. With BetterHelp, you don't have to leave the house if you don't feel up to that, or if it's not feasible for you because you live in a remote area, or you don't have access to transportation, or you just have trouble moving around. Whatever your reason, BetterHelp makes it easier to get, well, better help in whatever way that works for you. As someone who works a lot of crazy hours, I can't tell you how invaluable it is to have a service like that. And on top of being convenient, it's affordable. They charge a low, flat rate for counseling, and if it's still too much for you, you can see if you're eligible for financial aid discounts while signing up. Plus, the service gets cheaper after you use it for 3 months. Of course, there's no one-size-fits-all solution for therapy and counseling, and if you need medication or other in-person services, BetterHelp may not be for you. They're also not a crisis center, so if you're in crisis right now, you should call one of the hotlines at the link in the description. Don't go to their site. That said, if it sounds like the right fit for you, you can give BetterHelp a try by signing up at betterhelp.com/basement. That way, you can talk to a professional about whatever you're going through, and you'll be helping out your favorite professional shitbag while you're doing it. I can't tell you how much I wish I'd had a service like this back when I was going through what I went through. If you've battled your own personal demons in the past, or if you're battling them now and you feel comfortable sharing, I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. And if anime, games, or other nerdy ephemera have helped you in other ways, I'd like to hear that too. While you're down there, if you like the video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to Mother's Basement if you want to see more videos from me from now on. And if you want to see even more than that, subscribe to my second channel, Basement Escape, where very soon I'll be starting a new vlog series about my attempts to get back into Yu-Gi-Oh! I'll leave a link to that in the doobly-doo and the end card of this video. I'm Geoff Thew, professional shitbag, signing out from my mother's basement.